Thank you, Hillel. My thanks go to the organizations that are making this event possible. Good afternoon. Donatella, my daughter, is 5 years old and is very clever. She has long chestnut curls and a huge smile that lightens up the whole house. A week ago, when we were going to school, she said to me out of the blue, "Mummy, when you went to Caracas, why didn't you bring back my dad hidden in the suitcase where the toys are?" Joaquin, the older one, is 8. He draws and illustrates little stories in which Leopoldo Lopez has a cloak and rescues Yon from the political prison El Helicoide. These scenes happen every day, and I have to force myself to stop crying. I have sought help. I've consulted with my family, with psychologists, and with priests, but I do not find the way of explaining to my children why, if their father is innocent, he has spent a year in prison. My name is Rosaura Valentini de Goicoechea, and a year ago I became the wife of a political prisoner. My husband, Yon Goicoechea, is 32 years old, 12 of which he has spent in fighting for democracy in Venezuela. 1 year and 2 months ago, my husband was arrested on a busy motorway of Caracas by 15 officials from the intelligence services who were masked and who had heavy weapons. They violently tied up his hands with plastic tape and covered his head with a black bag. It was in these circumstances that he was taken to El Helicoide, the headquarters of the political police of Nicolas Maduro's dictatorship. There he was locked up in a cell without light or natural air. He was completely isolated. The bars at the entrance were closed off with black rubbish bags. On the ground there was food that had been decomposed because of worms and pieces of clothing covered in human excrement. The heat was suffocating. He was brought before a criminal judge following 56 hours of being disappeared. This was the only contact we could have with him. He was not allowed to make calls to lawyers or family members and remained in the punishment cell called El Tigrito for a time lapse of 10 days. His family knew nothing about him for almost a month. They were terrible days of fear, rage, despair, and panic. I was so panic-stricken that I am hardly able to convey my feelings to you. It was a lengthy process of learning, but today I am stronger. Being the wife of a political prisoner is the greatest challenge I have had to face. But, in all modesty, I can say to Venezuelans and to the entire world that I will face this with dignity. We are a family of people who struggle, that love their country. I am sure that our sacrifice, that of Yon in his cell, mine as a single mother, and my fatherless children, will serve to change millions of lives, because I have faith that we will achieve liberty in Venezuela. According to a recent study of the Catholic University of Andrés Bello, Central in Venezuela, in Simón Bolívar, in COVID 2016, 1 of every 2 children in Venezuela suffers from malnutrition. 93% of citizens have found it very difficult to purchase food. One of the most bitter criticisms, and no doubt one of the most valid criticisms of Chavismo, was that during the 90s, some Venezuelans had chosen to eat dog biscuits. Today, a bag of dog food costs almost a minimum wage. People are completely dehumanized. And what can we say to those millions of people that today will lie down hungry, with only water in their stomachs, and with the fear that they will have nothing to give their children for breakfast the following day? Is there any advice, any political message, any ideology sufficiently strong to justify the hunger you feel in your very entrails? Just a few months ago, The health minister of Venezuela was removed from office after she dared to publish a terrible truth. Child mortality has declined to the 1950 figures. Children, the elderly, and people of productive age are dying from diseases that nobody dies from in a democracy: diarrhea, dengue, or high fever. Diseases, illnesses that today are simple, are doing away with dozens of lives every day in my country because of lack of essential drugs. Today, I wish to bring the message to Switzerland, the voice of those that are suffering from physical pain, dying of malnutrition on any old corner of the street or a hospital in Venezuela. My husband is a prisoner because this is happening today, but never before has it happened in our country. My husband is not the only one. Our leader, Leopoldo Lopez, today is under house arrest. He has spent 3.5 years isolated in a military cell for the mere fact of having inspired millions of Venezuelans, for giving a dream of a better Venezuela that can be imagined, and that we call upon to defend civically and pacifically, to pursue this dream, both in the street as also by voting. Our mayor, Antonio Lesmo, was pushed out of his office, the office that he won with a people's majority, without prior proceedings. Daniel Ceballos, David Smolansky, Warner Jimenez, Alfredo Ramos, Delson Guarate, and Ramon Muchacho, examples of the many other mayors who have been taken prisoner, prosecuted, and removed from office under the dictatorship. There are also councillors like Jose Vicente Garcia, elected by popular vote, who is a prisoner in the cell in front of my husband. The people would be willing to give them back the authority that the military dictatorship has taken away from them. But I must confess that when waiting to go into the prison to see my husband, under the sun that is always weighing more heavily on the oxidated, rusty, dirty bars, and these cells full of injustice, what is most painful is to see the family members of hundreds of political prisoners that are not even political prisoners. Just to explain myself better, in my country, a violinist who was playing music was also taken prisoner. After an indication in a report prepared by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, hundreds of demonstrators in the recent protests, normal people, hard-working people, have been held in prisons and are tried by military tribunals in violation of the Constitution. If only I could show to you the faces of those that queue up to go in to see their family members in prison. This is the sad but true fact. Today I am representing the love of life of Yon Goicoechea, but also defending hundreds of political prisoners, in defense of the millions of Venezuelans that are prisoners of the dictatorship, in defense of my children and the children of all of those who will come after them. My family is working for Venezuela to be a country for arrivals and not for departures. 2 million Venezuelans have emigrated because criminality has made them flee. They're in political exile because of a lack of food and also a shortage of drugs. I would like the case of Yon to be made known throughout the world. I would like to have him back in my house. The Office for Human Rights is suggesting a path, and organizations such as UN Watch and Initiative of Venezuela, as also so many other Venezuelans throughout the world, have not left us alone in this struggle. It is a time for all countries represented in the UN to show their solidarity with the democratic cause of Venezuela and stop moving one side to another in order to respect the rules of diplomacy. Long live Venezuela, long live democracy. May God give strength to my husband and all the political prisons in our country. Strength and faith. Thank you very much.